Next up is Arthine Cossey van Duyne, CEO and founding partner of WaterFunder, LLC. Arthine is this, she gets her drinking water from the Tuolumne River. How about that? Arthine is a climate finance consultant focusing on solutions for water equity and water stewardship. She has global management experience in the public, private, government, academic, startup, and nonprofit industry sectors. Talk about an underachiever. She has crafted and implemented growth and expansion strategies for developing banks, foreign direct investment agencies, water utilities, capital markets, and Silicon Valley tech giants. Arthine is also an Army veteran and a Russian linguist. What don't you do? This is amazing. Having held roles in data management, military intelligence, and civil affairs. She was a FUSE Executive Fellow and an Aspen Climate Policy Fellow, and she has an economics BA from UC Davis and MBA from IMD in Switzerland. Quite honored to have you here today, and she's going to talk about sourcing water for buildings.
Hello. Okay, great, thanks. Sure. Water is the quiet requirement for everything. And I'm here to make the case for this community of designers and builders. That water really should be a strategy rather than a checkbox in the process. And I'm going to spend the next about 15 minutes kind of going through a bunch of background and concepts that set the stage for a further conversation. According to the EPA, the commercial and institutional sector is the second largest consumer of publicly supplied water. This is important because water resiliency is key to not only economic development, but also human health and welfare. Much of the conversation around conservation is based around residential use. We're going to look closer at the commercial and institutional and industrial use of water and how they can start playing a part. The LEED framework is the go-to standard for building efficiency around water. And its rubric, as it's designed, kind of focuses mainly on sinks and toilets. Processed water and outdoor irrigation are really important avenues for additional efficiency, especially because there's more scrutiny and regulation coming in on top of them. Think if you're here in California, conservation as a way of life, outlaw of non-functional turf. These are all opportunities that are facing CII as well. So this is an interesting opportunity for designers to think about other frameworks as for ways to do efficiency with their buildings. I'm sharing these statistics really to hit home the fact that processed water inside of buildings is not regulated, but it uses a lot of water. A billion metric meters of water is used globally for cement. We know that it's very carbon heavy, but it's also very water heavy. That's about 260 billion gallons of water. 3 to 5 million gallons of water a day is used, for example, to cool a hyperscaling data center, and that's enough for 30 to 40,000 residents, for a community of 30 to 40,000 people. When we talk about water as a human right, it really isn't on the books anywhere. There's no federal law, there's no jurisdiction for it in the Constitution. But the UN decided in 2010 that they were going to make the access to water a human right. In 2012, California was the first and so far the only state to make it a law that the access to water is a human right. Everyone else is trying, but we haven't gotten there yet. This is important because as we get to 2015, the UN sustainability goals were established, and UN SDG 6 establishes that, hey, look, we're going to try and make sanitation and water available for everyone and prioritize water management. 10 years forward, there's been a decline of investment in water. We're now $1 trillion behind every year in order to meet that 2030 goal. There are billions of people, let's put it this way, globally, who don't have access to water and sanitation. 2 million here in the United States and even 1 million here in California. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Conference of Parties, the COP28 in 2023, finally added water management as a strategy for climate management and climate control to meet the 2030 and 2050 goals. What spurred out of this is more than 40% of the G20 plus are starting to add water management as part of their disclosure requirements. But many corporations have been already doing this for over a decade. This brings us to corporate water stewardship. This is a framework, really, that allows businesses to craft ESG goals around water and to roll them out with their strategies in alignment with carbon. In the last decade, many companies have made pledges to be carbon neutral and to be water neutral by 2030 and water positive by 2050. And there are 3 ways that they're really trying to make these investments. One, inside the fence, where their building is using the water. The second is within their supply chains, how water is used in all of the products that they use to do their businesses. And third, investments outside of the fence. This is where they're doing mitigation, restoration in the watersheds where they buy and source their water. These companies are all some of the nonprofit organizations that support them as they define their goals, measure their goals, implement their goals, and report their goals. In the most recent CDP survey about water, many of the challenges that these companies face come from flood, risk, drought, contamination, and aging infrastructure. What's really exciting is the 50%. They're starting to actively engage their supply chain on how they're using water. So this is where material science is really coming to play. The aging infrastructure situation is really real. Here in the United States, the American Society of Civil Engineers publishes a report card every 5 years on the health and stability of our infrastructure. And this is where we are as of 2021. That's good, actually. In 2017, stormwater and wastewater were Fs, and drinking water was D. So we've made some progress. And we're at this situation really because we've had decades of deferred maintenance and underinvestment in our water infrastructure. And we are at a historic moment where most of our in-ground water infrastructure is older than 50 years old. So we are having to make the once in every multiple generation investment where everything needs to get rebuilt, especially in those communities that were not deemed important enough to get infrastructure in the first place. But it's not enough money. There's a gap in what is needed versus what has been applied. There's about 37% of all the investment that we've made so far in our water infrastructure, that's for all drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater. It's only meeting 37% of the capital need. So what we're looking at as we hurdle toward 2029, it's going to be close to $435 billion gap in order to get things done. So I'm sure you're asking, oh my God, who's paying for our water infrastructure? And I'm going to ask you guys to look at your water bills, right? Because you are. Between 2012 and 2021, residential water rates have gone up 43%. In that same period, the Department of Energy said, yeah, CII commercial rates have gone up as well, but they've only gone up 4%. Residential ratepayers are actually subsidizing the infrastructure build, mainly because it's based on the meter. And that's how our rate structures are done. And many CIIs are able to negotiate bulk water rates for the water that they use, not only for their sinks and toilets, right? They're paying the regular rate for their sinks and toilets, but for their processed water, they're negotiating bulk water rates that are less than what the residential rates. And this is really there are rules and guidelines state by state on how rates are done, but this is an opportunity for you to understand how your customers are paying for their water and how they're using water inside their buildings. And the fact that more and more, if you've got corporate customers that are using your products or your business, they're going to have accountability for how they use their water on their footprints, whether it's coming in on their water bill or not. What's important also to understand about the ratepayers is that for the EPA, they say that an affordable water bill, affordable water rate is less than 2% of the household income. Most people are paying 4 to 6% of their income for their water bills, and the lowest incomes are paying between 6 to 8%. And that brings us to the water energy nexus and the water energy conundrum. There's a lot of water that's used in the production of energy, and there's a lot of energy used in the treatment and the distribution of water. So your customers, your CIA corporate customers, are facing this conundrum of, I've got to reduce both. We have to reduce energy, we have to reduce water in order to meet their ESG goals. And so right now, they're opting to reduce energy inside the fence and reduce their water footprints outside of the fence. And they're doing that mainly because it makes sense on their balance sheet. Energy costs more than water for them on their balance sheet. And that's what's technically available. And so outside of the fence, they're investing in new treatments and fixings of freshwater system and opportunities to do water quality and water quantity. But this is an opportunity, really, for the design community to shine, is to come in and figure out how your customers, your corporate customers, the CII customers, can do more with water efficiency inside of the fence. And this brings us to the mindset. For me, the mindset is being curious, being collaborative, and being innovative. Let's get curious about your customers, not just the humans that are going to be operating and not just the function. You need to understand what their business strategies are. You need to understand what their water strategies are. You need to understand what their water risks are, because they are paying attention to it as well. You need to figure out, where does your project get its water? It's not just getting it from the retailer that you get your bill from. Is it source water? Where's your source water? Is it surface? Is it ground? Is it recycled? What's the quality? What are the risks? Next, get to know your suppliers themselves. How many different retailers are delivering services to you, to your building? Go visit them. Go see what their facilities look like. Read their urban water management plans, because every 5 years they update and tell you what their infrastructure challenges are and what their financial challenges are. And by the way, take a look at the underlying frameworks that are available for measuring water efficiency, as well as all of the NGOs that are giving guidance and policy guidance on what's happening with water and water efficiency. If you don't understand what's happening specifically in California around water efficiency and reporting, you've got to pay attention to it, because your customers are going to be paying attention to it too. I mentioned even HOAs are going to be held accountable for ripping out all of those lawns, because if it's non-functional turf, it's got to go. Being collaborative, that means don't just talk to the economic development folks and the planner. actually go talk to the water utility manager if you're going to be using a lot of processed water, because your customers are going to be using a lot of processed water, and they're going to be wanting to know, how are we going to take care of this? What are our options inside the fence? Learn about corporate water stewardship. Find out how you can participate in the storyline to help make it easier for corporations to understand their ESG goals around water. Work with the nonprofits and the NGOs that are working at the water level and making sure that they're able to do this. See how you can participate in that. And have a conversation about water actively around your design community, because you guys are the ones that are feeding into the ideas and the visions. If your vision does not include water, just includes carbon, you're missing the boat, because you can't build without water. And finally, it's time to get innovative. You guys have access to budget to do pilots and proofs of concepts of next generational technologies. Your water utilities don't. And they need your help to come up with ideas on how to do things differently with cooling towers, with air-cooled cooling towers, or with on-site reuse, and as well as new sources of water where they're doing atmospheric water generations, or new distributed source water at the building level, as well as low water concrete. That's just one approach. And these are some examples of companies that are doing exactly that could love to do pilots with you. And that's my story. I'm happy to have more conversations later.